For centuries, whispers of the undead have haunted the night. From forgotten villages to modern cinema, the legend of the vampire refuses to die. But where does the truth end and the myth begin? Tonight I journey through the blood-soaked history of the vampire. Prepare yourself and watch closely. The origins of the vampire stretch deep into the shadows of medieval Europe. Stay with us to understand the stories, events, or historical characters that contributed to found the myths of vampire through time. In the 12th century, villagers whispered of the undead, bodies that did not decay, corpses found with blood-stained lips. The terror spread, fueled by unexplained deaths, night terrors, and mysterious illnesses. Could diseases have been mistaken for vampirism? Rabies, for instance, causes violent aggression and aversion to light. Porphyria leads to extreme sensitivity to sunlight, even causing gums to recede, making teeth appear longer. Did these afflictions create the first vampire myths? Certain historical figures also reinforce the myth. Gap 1S. Let's start with the most famous one, Vlad the Impaler, 1431 to 1476. In Wallachia, Vlad the Impaler ruled with an iron fist. His enemies feared him for a reason. He impaled thousands alive, leaving their bodies displayed as warnings. His brutality became legendary, and centuries later his name would be tied to the infamous Count Dracula. But was he truly a vampire, or just a man who inspired terror? Let's now talk about another case, but that you probably never heard of. Elizabeth Báthory, 1560-1614, also known as the Blood Countess, also marked her time and contributed to the myth. A noblewoman accused of the most horrific crimes, abducting and murdering young women and, according to rumors, bathing in their blood. Some say the accusations were exaggerated, but her legend remains one of the darkest chapters in vampire folklore. Another case, this time from Serbia, 1725, a village in terror. Peter Plagojevich had died, or so they thought. Days later, his wife and son swore they saw him, pale and lifeless, standing in their doorway. Soon after, villagers began dying mysteriously. His grave was opened, and what they found was chilling. His body was fresh, his mouth stained with blood. Terrified, they did what had to be done. They drove a wooden stake through his heart. A few years later, Arnold Pal's case struck terror once again. Before his death, he claimed he had been attacked by a vampire. After his burial, strange deaths followed. When his grave was opened, the corpse had barely decomposed. The villagers acted swiftly, staking his body and burning it to prevent him from rising again. Even in the 19th century, the fear of vampires persisted. In Rhode Island, a town struck by tuberculosis turned to an old belief: vampires feeding on the living. When Mercy Brown's family fell ill, her grave was exhumed, her heart burned, and the ashes fed to her surviving brother in hopes of breaking the curse. It was one of the last recorded vampire panics in American history. From folklore to fiction, vampires transformed. The first and most famous fiction was Bram Stoker's Dracula, 1992, directed by Francis Ford Coppola. Starring Gary Oldman and Anthony Hopkins, it gave us the image of the aristocratic vampire, seductive yet terrifying. Hollywood embraced the myth, from Bela Lugosi's Dracula to Christopher Lee's chilling portrayal. And then everything changed. Anne Rice redefined them in Interview with the Vampire: melancholic, tragic, cursed. Buffy the Vampire Slayer turned them into cult favorites. Then came Twilight, and suddenly vampires became glittering symbols of romance. But no matter how they evolve, one thing remains: our fascination never dies. Did you ever ask yourself, why do we still obsess over vampires? Maybe it's their promise of immortality, maybe it's their tragic curse, or maybe it's because deep down we still fear the dark. And we wonder, what if something is watching us from the shadows? Legends may change, but the vampire's shadow remains eternal. Could psychology help us understand better our fascination? Beyond myth, the vampire could be considered as an archetype, an immortal reflection of human fears and desires. Referring to the shadow of Carl Jung brings a completely new perspective on this topic. It embodies our dread of death, the seduction of power, and the struggle between darkness and light. Now I have a question. Did you enjoy this deep dive into vampire history? If yes, help us by subscribing now and sink your teeth into more thrilling mysteries. And tell me, what's your favorite vampire legend?